Hey, what's going on, guys? So I am giving my opinion on the recent podcast of Rehman versus Paul Smith. Now, just a little disclaimer, I have spoken to neither party about this video or even this subject. So I am purely giving my opinion on what I've seen on social media over the last few years, what I know from meeting and chatting to both of the individuals, and what I have recently heard on the podcast. And I will just reiterate, it is purely my opinion, but it does come with an underlying warning to both investors and developers looking to work with JV partners. So firstly, Paul Rehman, if you're watching this video and you're a little bit offended about what I'm about to say, then apologies in advance, but I'm just gonna say how it is in my opinion, with not a view to take a side or without a view to say that one side was better than the other, but purely to create a warning for both sides in the future, both investor and developer. So quickly, how do I know both of these individuals? I first met Paul Smith when he was going through the progressive route, and then he became a trainer, and we had lunch, I think a couple of times, and maybe spoke. And we actually talked about doing a little bit of business together when it came to like letting agencies and franchises and stuff like this years ago. It might have been 7-8 years ago. And then I first came across Rehman after he was recommended to me after a couple of successful joint ventures with another individual. And he and I actually never met in person, but we spoke several times over the phone. And I liked both individuals. Both had their own characteristics, but I have to say that I am not surprised that something has happened to make the relationship go sour. Again, I'm not taking sides and I'm not giving a one-way opinion on this matter. But definitely from speaking to both the individuals way before they ever did this deal, and then seeing this deal pan out over social media, and now unfortunately the fallout effect, I'm not surprised that someone has been burnt. And I don't think it is completely 100% one person's or one side's fault. But bear with me on that. So first of all, I have done in excess of 150, it's got to be closer to 200 property deals. And most of those have been with joint venture partners on a profit share basis, some with fixed rates of returns. And I can categorically tell you that when things have gone wrong, I've always stopped them going bad. What does that mean? So things do go wrong. You joint venture with a person that you physically can't work with because of how they work with you. The personalities just don't gel. Or the property doesn't perform how it should have done. Or you have things go wrong with the project that were unforeseen, or builders let you down, rip you off. All sorts of things can go wrong in a joint venture. And I've said in many, many videos that if you do a joint venture, you have to give away a large chunk of the profit, but equally, the investor shares the risk. That's the fallout of having a massive return. And I've had individuals, investors, have 100% returns with me in a matter of months. And one of those is the individual who recommended I speak to Rehman a few years ago. And equally, I've had deals where I've been let down on projects by builders. I've paid the money, they've not done the work, and eventually we've had to sell the property just to break even. And I have put my hand in my pocket and made sure the investor got their money back and a small return. I've actually never had a deal where an investor has lost any money. And even to this day, I have got great successful properties that are ongoing joint ventures. Lots of money is being made, but the investors are not happy because we've had a personality clash. So you can do the best deals in the world and still people will turn on you. That is my learning, and that is from my experience of doing joint ventures. And don't get me wrong, with the right people on the right project, I would still consider a joint venture, but more than likely it would be a fixed rate of return. And 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, I'll just use my own money because I've built myself into a position of strength and wealth. So with that being said, I have to put my hand on my heart and say, I really feel for you, Rehman. Forget the circumstances for a second. To lose money in a deal, I think is a really, really bad situation to be in. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I do think that there should always be positions on both sides, all parties involved, to make sure that no one loses money who has invested the money into the deal. And I say that first of all because that is absolutely the priority and my biggest point here. And then flipping it to the side of the developer. So from what I know, and I'm only going by what I've seen on social media and what I've heard on podcasts and YouTube and what have you, is that Paul had a deal. It was talked about quite a bit prior to any of these issues as a very good deal. And I guess that's red flag number one. I have always been a massive advocate of people talking about deals that are great when they're done. But on social media, you see new companies, new individuals every 18 months come to the front of the table, come on our feeds, and they're talking about how many deals they're going to buy, how many deals that they're doing, how much GDV is going to be done when the deal is done. But we all know that a lot can happen in between even buying the deal and finishing it. We've got a guy locally, I'm not going to name him, but most of you will know him because he's a copycat of mine. He literally rinsed and repeat what I was doing, but he'd done it on a much bigger scale and his fall is much bigger. And there are strategies of repossessions taking place and investors employing investigators and winding up orders against him, and that's just how he works. So there is a lot of in between. So if you're watching this and you're brand new to property and you're thinking, how do I really have an impact on the property world? My advice is to get the deals done and then talk about them. You will be one of the very few and far between of individuals who talk about deals when they are done and how great they are. But having said that, Paul got himself into a situation where he had 2 or 3 investors in total on this deal. Now, I know from the days of working with investors on multiple deals, buying 30, 40, 50, 60 properties in a single year up to like £7.8 million, that there are some crucial rules that you must follow. And that is 1 investor, 1 deal, 1 transaction. If you bring 2 investors or more into 1 project, that is a pooled transaction. If they don't know each other and you've brought them together to buy or do this deal, that is a pooled investment. That's FCA regulated territory. So I don't know if this met that. They could have known each other beforehand. There's lots of ifs or buts, but that is a huge red flag. And my understanding is the investors didn't know about each other. So make of that what you will. And I'm not judging Paul here and I'm not judging the investors. I'm just saying be very careful. But here's the thing, and this is where Rehman might not like what I'm saying. Now, I spoke to Rehman many times. We had long conversations about doing several projects. But what I didn't like about Rehman is that he really did push on me that he was in the inner circle of progressive and he was up there with the big boys and that I should really be wanting to work with him because of that. Now, how I do my due diligence and how I do it now to then is I absolutely go on the commercials of the deal. And I remember having a conversation with Rehman. I said, look, Rehman, I'm worried because you're banding around quite a lot that you've got a substantial amount of money. I didn't know it was the investor's money at the time. I thought it was all his. And you are telling people that they need to impress you, that they need to befriend you. And my words to him, I remember I pulled over, I was on the phone in the car to him. I pulled over to him because we were going to do a deal and he was going to send the funds, but for some reason he couldn't send them to solicitor. There was an issue with the bank transfer, but I was in a meeting. I was doing something else. I couldn't take the call. And his message to me, and then I picked up the phone on Facebook, I think it was, that if I don't convince him why he should give me his money, then he's pulling out of the deal. And my words to him were, look, Rehman, I think maybe you should pull out the deal because I am not in a position where I am ever going to convince an investor to give me their money. The deal is why you should be investing. And the deal and the pitfalls and the positives and everything is all laid out for you. And I'm sorry that you've tried to contact me and you couldn't get hold of me for an hour. But look, I was a busy guy at the time. And that sent a major red flag to me. And my passing word to Rehman was, look, stay in touch. If you ever need any help, let me know. But I don't think it's going to be right for us to work together because of how you want to work with me is not how I want you to work with the commercials of the deal. And I'm worried that you are actually trying to work with so many different types of people for the wrong reasons, that you could go into a deal that will have a a domino effect on what you're doing, and that might affect the projects that we're involved in. So I'm not really that interested. And unfortunately, I ended up being right, and I don't wish any bad will on anyone. And I definitely am gutted for Rehman that he's lost that amount of money. But I do think that the investor, and if you are an investor looking to do a deal with someone, you need to wake up and realize that you are in a position of strength when you invest the money, but you need to be investing the money in the safest way, the most tax efficient structure for you, and the safest way for your funds to have security. But you need to be investing not because you think the guy is a nice guy, but because the commercials and the security in the deal stack up. It's a commercial relationship. Yes, people become friends. Yes, people get emotional. Yes, people invest with their heart. And yes, people fall out. But if the deal stacks up, you can never take that away from the investor and the developer. And I've got that set of circumstances right now. No matter how much I'm sure my investors would love it if the deal was to fail, they cannot deny that the deal that we are in is an absolute brilliant deal. And then going to the developer side. Now, again, no one knows what was said and what was done, but I do know that Rehman is now left with a shortfall of about £300,000. And the reason why Paul and the deal has now completely collapsed is because the first two investors who had a first charge over the asset repossessed the property. Now, from a developer's point of view, you can be in a position where things go wrong on a project. You can be in a position where things change, legislation change, markets change. So you have to hold your balls and make the best out of a bad situation. And that sometimes means going against the grain, going against the original plan A or plan B and having a plan C or D. And sometimes investors don't like it. And look, I've had it. I've had it where people invest with me for my local knowledge, my experience, my reputation, my ability to deliver great results. That's the reason why they invest. But when we do the deal, they start questioning how I do things. They start questioning why I do things. They want to do things their way. They want to do things a different way. They want to do things how they would do it. And then they start arguing with me as to why things aren't going on track when we've done it their way. But when you invest with a developer, you need to leave them to get on with it. Even if sometimes it looks a little bit strange with how they're doing things, trust their knowledge, trust their experience, trust their ability to deliver results. Now, I'm not saying this deal didn't happen in this set of circumstances, but I can categorically tell you that I have had investors try and change deals. And I have had to fight the investor not to. I had to drag them kicking and screaming to then have an end result that pays dividend. And in the end, they really love the deal and they love the returns. But in this set of circumstances, it does look like the relationship completely broke down. And no one will ever know why. But we do know that the facts were that the first two investors who had the first chance repossessed the property. Now, when that happened, and I'm sure they had their reasons, Paul was completely out of control of that deal. The deal had gone. So everything that he could possibly do with his knowledge and experience had fallen behind the waistline. And unfortunately for Rehman, because of how he invested in the deal, he had no protection. And now we're left with a position where Paul has, I'm sure, taken investors' money for a deal. The money has been spent on the deal, but the deal has been repossessed. So Paul hasn't personally benefited from taking that money. And the deal has been taken away from Paul, so he has no way of making that money from the deal. And unfortunately for Rehman is that because he had no control, the deal was taken away and sold, and he lost all of his money. So now you have a position where Paul Rehman has lost his money, but Paul is kind of pointing the finger at the first two investors, and the investors are pointing the finger at Paul saying, well, look, he didn't do what he said he was going to do. And as a result, there is no deal left for Rehman to potentially get some of that money back, which is a really, really bad situation. And if a deal goes wrong, you must try your utmost to stop it going bad. And this is a really good example of that happening. And yes, I have listened to Rehman's podcast. My heart went out to him. I really did feel for him. And he went through a really, really tough time when he was going through this. And he puts a lot of blame on Paul's shoulders. And he asks him some direct questions. you're in Monaco, you're doing these things, you're going on holidays. Why aren't you paying me my money back? And I'm sure, I haven't listened to anything for a little while, but I'm sure from a developer's point of view, from Paul's point of view, he's saying, well, look, the other two repossessed the deal. I have no deal to try and give you that money back. I personally didn't ever benefit from that money. It went into the deal. And this is why pooled investment is so regulated. But this is another really big warning flag to investments and joint ventures. And when an investor invests and the reasons why, and then they try and challenge to the deal specifics. Now, I can't give you a hypothetical what I would have done in that situation, because if an investor goes to the point where they challenge, disrupt, and cause damage to a deal to the point where it's completely collapsing, it becomes the investor's fault. I've actually got clauses within my joint venture agreement that if investors do X, Y, and Z, and it causes a loss, they take that loss 100% responsibility. Now, I don't know if that clause is in the joint venture agreement. I don't even know if there was a joint venture agreement between this set of investors and developers. Hopefully, you will take it as a huge warning flag from me, from my experience and my opinion on this set of circumstances. That you've got two individuals here, quite high profile. I know them both. I've spoken to them both prior to this, and I've now heard both sides of the stories. And I hope I haven't put a one-sided story across, because that's definitely not what I wanted to do. But I definitely wanted to give my opinion. I feel for Rehman, my heart goes out to him. But I also can understand Paul's position. Now, if there is evidence that Paul did benefit from that money personally, or that money went to Paul and didn't go into the deal, now I think there is a liability. I think there is an obligation. I think there's a moral obligation on Paul, but no one knows. And I have a good idea on how these deals are structured. I've done so many of them. And I can categorically say that it would be suicidal. It would be fraudulent to take an investor's money and not use it for that specific deal. So I think it might be quite unlikely that that has happened. And that is probably why we're in this stalemate. But I'll leave and I'll finish with a passing thought. Is that 300,000 or 270 or whatever it is a hell of a lot of money. But Rehman has told his story many, many times over. So indirectly, and I'm a massive fan of indirectly things, it has probably helped a lot of people. And I say this with all the will in the world. Rehman, from your podcast, it sounds like you're on a recovery plan. It looks like it was investors' money as well, which my heart goes out to them. But it looks like you've got a recovery plan in place to pay them back. And look, I have personally been the victim of fraud. I won't go into the details of it, but I lost like 22,000. And I remember it was my own fault. I fell victim to a scam. And I remember thinking, do I just completely shut down and just give up? But had I have done that, I would not be anywhere near where I am today. So I hope that Rehman has discovered strength that he probably didn't know he had from everything that's happened to him. And I am sure that him being such a nice guy, but now a far more resilient and due diligent guy, that he will make that money back off of the back of the lessons that he's learned. He'll never be able to measure it, but I am convinced that it will happen. So I wish both Rehman and Paul well, but that's my opinion on the set of circumstances. But the underlying message is to make sure that if you are an investor or a developer, you make sure that you do things 100% correct for you and the deal to avoid these things happening. But look, that's it from me. Hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.